Hey, everybody.
Hello.
First, I'll just check that everyone can hear us. Thank you for coming. I'll come back up the top. I can see Jenna's here, Ryan, Lick Lick Pop, Carol, Bonnie, Shining, Gloria, Jenna again, Carol. So thank you all for coming. Can you all hear us first? Just let us know. Just put a 1 in if you can hear us.
I am too.
Okay, cool. So on Saturday night, what would have been probably Friday for most of you, because I know most of you are from overseas. Me and Mr. Aussie went, Spirit Time. I'm not going to call him Mr. Aussie on his own channel.
Thank you.
But we went to a ghost hunt through Melbourne. So this is a little bit different to what we usually do because it wasn't so much paranormal, but it was learning about what was around us, and we wanted to show you as well. We did take, Spirit Time can tell you, he did take his kit. Do you want to?
So we've made up a little bag when we do our ghost things. I've got the spirit box, I've got the EMF, a little notepad, and the app as well. Now, because it was a walking tour, I did use the spirit box on our first spot where we stopped, but the lady doing the tour gave me a bit of a weird look, so I couldn't use it. So we're relying on the EMF and the ghost app for the rest of the night, which is unfortunate, but walking tours are a bit hard to use the spirit box because you don't get to stop in one place long enough.
And we did find that. But we did get a lot of good readings off the EMF.
Yep.
We did use my phone as well, and there was a lot of strange things. I was at times not being able to take photos. What's very strange because I have the newest iPhone. But again, we know that spirits do take the batteries, and a number of the photos that I did take when we got home were actually just pure white. There was nothing there.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah. So anyway, let's start. So it was the old Melbourne town ghost tour. Just a welcome to it.
So you've learned a little bit of history about Melbourne. Be good for a lot of you people that aren't in Australia. And you will get to see some of the activity we had a little bit later on, but the first place we went to was a bit quiet.
So the first story we're going to tell you is about Flinders Station and the ghost that is there. We didn't account this one or anything to do with this one, but we did want to let you know about it. So this is Flinders Street when it used to... So to explain it now, Flinders Street station is one of the main stations in Melbourne. But before it was a train station, it used to be a fish market because it does run straight along our Yarra River. So when it was a fish market, obviously people went down to the Yarra River, they caught their fish, and this is going back, we're talking back in the 1800s. Melbourne was also, at the time, we got a lot of people coming here because everyone was coming to Australia, and it was obviously the gold rush. Strangely enough, and I don't know how people believed this, but people were coming to Australia and coming to Melbourne because they thought that you could walk down the street, pick up a bit of gold, and you'd be rich. Little did they know that the gold fields were actually 3 or 4 hours drive away from Melbourne. And back in them times, they only had horses, so it was days away. So people either started fishing or trying to get out to the gold fields. And they used to come to the fish market to sell their fish. But in 1854, they turned it into the Flinders Street Station. And this is actually one of the first photos of the Flinders Street Station when it was built.
Yeah, that's cool, Carol.
And this is it again. It shows the Yarra River on the side. This is today, though. I didn't get one of when it was back in then, but it shows the river along the station.
The river was a lot cleaner back then compared to what it is now, too.
Yeah. Now, there is 15 platforms, I believe, on Flinders Station. But the story is on platform 10. This is a photo of the platform 10. At the end, there is an old man that is a fisherman, and he was known as George, and that's how people know him. People apparently still see him today in early hours of the morning, and if people do go over to platform 10 to go and approach this George, he just disappears.
So when he's standing on the platform, he's standing there with his fishing rod and his bucket. So people on other platforms actually think someone's standing there, but doesn't move. So they get curious and they walk up from their platform and walk down and walk over, and when they get there, there's actually nobody there.
Okay. So this is what it looks like today. This is the Flinders Street Station, so you can see just how much it has gone. Carol, we would love it. We love anything ghost. So that was that story. So our next one is the Young Jackson Hotel. And this is where we actually started our tour. It was out the front of this one. So here again is the Jackson Young Hotel.
Now the hotel is right across the road from the station too, which was really handy for us.
And this is a picture in the hotel. So this one is known as the Chloe painting, and it is very famous painting. This painting was done in the 1875s. It's an oil canvas one, and it was done.
It was Jules Joseph Lefleur.
He was the painter. So there is a story behind this painting, and they do say that it is haunted. There has been stories from the staff about things happening, cutlery going missing, things being moved around the room. I think the other one was people feeling like they've been held at the neck as well. But the story about it was, so it's called the Chloe painting, but the lady that actually is the model, they thought was a prostitute, but she wasn't. She was actually a proper model, and her name was Marie. But when she got the painting done, she actually fell in love with the painter, and then the painter turned around and ended up marrying Marie's sister, whose name was Chloe. So that's where it got its name. And
she was in love with the painter. She fell deeply in love with him, but he didn't love her. He loved her sister. So that's why he called the picture Chloe. Now, on her 21st birthday, she decided, because she'd been estranged from her family for so long, because she felt like no one wanted anything to do with her. So her 21st birthday, she had all her family and friends come over. She had her sister and the artist come to her house. And what she had done, she'd made a soup and filled it with poison. So her intention was she was going to get her revenge and wipe out the family. But on the night when the family rocked up, they were all lovey-dovey. They thought they'd done something to her, which is why she pulled back from them, and they didn't want to interfere, so they just let her go. So her feeling guilty, she's told them all to go home. The party was over. She's taken the soup to a room and drunk the poison soup and killed herself.
So now every time, as they said, they have stories and this picture is haunted. Again, we didn't feel anything around it, but we just wanted to show what the picture was and the story behind it. So from there, we went over to an alleyway, and it's the Frederick Deeming story. This is the alleyway. It's just across, like just up from the hotel that we were at. But it's kind of hidden, and a lot of people because we're going back in the 1800s, they used to use it to get away from the police. A lot of people also used to hide away into these alleys, and if you went through them on a night to try and get home, basically you either came out shorter in your pockets or you didn't come out at all. So that's what these alleys were known for. There was 2 of them. This one came straight down, and there was sort of another one that came off. And as you can see today, they are full of graffiti. They are still used. But the one thing I liked about it, even the road, if you have a look, is still the old cobblestone that it used to be back then.
And it was still in good nick too compared to today's roads.
Yeah. So this is another one of it, a bit darker. So you can imagine how it would have been at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning if you were trying to sneak home through the dark alley.
Now, a lot of the graffiti has been sanctioned too, so the Victorian government hasn't minded the graffiti, but some of it is tagging, which has ruined it.
And these were just some shoes that were hanging up as well in the alley. So the story about the alley, or the story we got told, was of Frederick Bailey Deeming, and he used to hang out at this alley. This was Frederick. Now, he met a lady called Sarah on a boat coming over to Australia, and they fell in love, but she didn't let him know straight away, and they were living in Sydney. Now, he then moved over to Perth and started working. And she was going to go and join him, because then she decided that she did love him. But luckily she didn't get there, because then his history started to come out. Now, Frederick Bailey Deemings did have a wife. Her name was Marie, and he had 4 kids to her. On the 26th of July, 1891, they were back over in London. His wife and 4 children disappeared. No one knows what happened to them, and they were just gone. So Frederick done what any good person would do at the time. He changed his name and moved away. Then he met Emily Martha, and he married her, being an upstanding citizen that he thought he was. And December 1891, what was the same year, she went missing also. And when he changed his name, he redid all his floorboards in the house. And then he lost his second wife, Martha, and it was in the same year. So again, he did what he had to do, changed his name, redone his floors in the house, and moved on. And this is when he was in Perth, and Sarah was going to go and meet him. But by then they started looking into him and some of these missing things, and people had moved into the house that he had lived with his second wife, and they started smelling some smells in there. So when they realized the floors had been redone, they pulled it up, and not only did they find his second wife, but she had been cut open and all of her insides had been taken out, all of her organs. So then they started to work out that what was going on. They then went back over to London, and the house that he had with his first wife and his 4 children, they seen that the floors there also had been redone. So they pulled them up and found his first wife and 4 children the same way. So it was kind of lucky that Sarah didn't meet up with him. Do you know what I mean? There was people wondering whether he was Jack the Ripper or part of it, but we don't know. But he did end up being hung for the deaths of the first 2
While
families.
he was in jail, he did admit to one of his cellmates that he was Jack the Ripper. Whether or not that's true or not, we don't know. His body was in an unmarked grave, and what they did move it, and where they moved it to, the head was missing, and they don't know where the head's gone. So the rest of his body's still in an unmarked grave somewhere in Victoria, but without its head.
And again, in this alley, we didn't get any, did you get any words on the news?
We had the EMF going, we had the app going, it was just dead quiet. or apart from one person asking me if I was a writer.
So that was his second wife, Emily Mather. This was the picture that was actually in the paper when they worked out what he'd done, what was someone's obviously illustration of how the murders played out. Okay, this man here was in another laneway, and his name was William Overton. Now, William Overton owned some shops in a laneway, and they were bakery shops and sweet shops, like confectionery. So his theory was that during the day, people could see and smell the food, but at night, they could only smell it, they couldn't see it, so they wouldn't come in and buy it. At the time we were back, this is back when gas lighting was lights. It wasn't as easy as what it is today. And William Overton actually worked on some boards to make all these lights work. And he had them out the front of his shop, so that way, as people came down at night time, not only could they smell the sweets, they could see them with the lights and they could come in. So the story with it is that today people do still see him walking up and down the street and looking at the lights. And in Melbourne, these are the lights that were done. And they are still the replicas of the original lights that were there. So there's another one. And they all are down the street as well. And he's just known to be walking up and down the street.
So I'm just replying to the chat.
So the next one we spoke about was Gun Alley murder. Do you want to talk about?
Now this alley sees quite a lot of activity. It's about a young girl that was murdered in the alley. Now, when they do their tours, she frequents the area quite a lot. She likes to play with the lights in the buildings in the surrounding area and in the car park, making them flick, just turning them on and off. Some people have reported a queasy feeling and a tight feeling around their throat while they do the tours. Now, I had the EMF going and it was going off its head. And there was quite a bit of activity. Now, whether it was her or not, I don't know. But I also had the app thing going too, and that was also going off its head. Unfortunately, like I said earlier, I couldn't use the spirit box.
So to touch on the story, here's Alma. What was her last name?
Her last name's hard to pronounce. Churchisk or something like that anyway.
But her name was Alma. So this is a photo of her when she was young. And this was Alma when she was 12 years old.
Now, she was raped and murdered at the age of 12. So you can imagine, even for back then, it's really bad even compared to now.
So on the day that she did get murdered, she was supposed to be going to her grandmother's house and then to a butcher's and then collect a parcel of meat and drop it back at her auntie's. It was not common for her to go walking or go out away from where she was supposed to be going. A witness also said that they did see her that day and that she was being followed and scared and looking over her shoulder, but no one ever knew whether that was true or not. So it's photos of it today, but this is the actual corner what she was last seen on. And just down the alleyway is where we were. Across the road from here used to be a pub. And a lot of people at the time weren't coming forward with information. Again, we were back in the 1800s, so not a lot of people did. And the police ended up offering a reward. So as soon as there was money involved, 3 people came forward with statements. And all 3 people were pointing fingers at the publican who owned the pub across the road. Funny thing is, all 3 people were actually barred from the pub. So I don't know if that came into it. But they all said, we don't have any evidence, but if you go to his house, you will find the evidence. It's all there. So the police went to the house and they found a red hair in a brush, who was at the time one of his girlfriends that he didn't want to talk about. So he didn't say whose red hair it was. But because Alma had red hair as well, and at this time, obviously, DNA wasn't a thing, that they put 2 and 2 together and he ended up getting hung for it. Now, the funny thing with this case is back in 1990, they came across the evidence, and usually back in those days, once they solved a case, they got rid of the evidence. But for some reason, these red hairs from this case were still intact and preserved as well. So they actually ended up doing DNA tests on the hairs and found out that he actually was innocent, and he has been pardoned, but little good it's done him when he got hung back in the 1800s. But he has been cleared of it now. And we still don't know who done it. So this was the owner of the pub. His name was Colin Ross. So the next one we went to was Princess Theatre. You want to talk about Princess Theatre? Because you seem to...
Okay, so it was only a short walk from the alley to the theatre, and along the way, some of the other ladies in the group, one was a bit of a skeptic and didn't really believe, but a lot of the others did. So when we got close to the theatre, the tour lady said to us the movie side of it had actually burned down a few times over the years, and they've renovated it, but it's never actually been the same. But attached to it is the Windsor Hotel. Now, when we got to the Windsor Hotel, oh boy, did we have some activity.
That's Frederick there. So before we got to the Windsor Hotel, the quick story about the Princess Theatre was this guy here, his name was Frederick. I can't remember his last name. But he was playing at the theatre back in the 18... Baker. So he was playing back in the theatre back in 1800s again. I think it was 1854 or something like that. And he was the star of the show. So he got up at the start and he done his part and he went down into the little trapdoor. And when he went down, everyone went on with the show, and people who were down underneath, obviously, was attending to Frederick, and he actually had a heart attack and died halfway through the show. At the time, they didn't want to tell everyone and alarm everybody because then everyone would leave. So they continued to go on with the show. At the end, once everyone left and all the actors were back talking and everything, they told the other people what had happened and that Frederick had actually lost his life, and people started asking when. And they went on to say halfway through the show, but the funny thing was people at the end of the show saw him. He was playing the devil at the time and was in a red suit, and they saw him bowing at the end of the show with everybody else. So they don't know what that was about. To this day, though, every time at the Princess Theatre that there is a new show, I know Harry Potter's the new one coming out now,
people are raving about,
but they always leave a seat, and it's always left for Frederick because people still reckon that he still goes and always checks out the first show of a new show that comes to the Princess Theatre. He's also known to be grabbing people on the shoulder and to tap people and tell them that they're in his seat. So we did get a lot of activity, as Spirit Time said, out the front, but it would definitely, I'd love to go in there and do an investigation for sure. So then we got to the Windsor Hotel.
Now, this is Melba. A lot of you people won't know who she is. She used to be on a $100 bill up until a few years ago, and they've taken her off now. But Melba used to live in the Windsor. Now, she was bit of a thing. How can I put it?
With the men.
Yeah, she liked to flirt with the men and have frequent male guests. I will put it that way. Now, we're all standing out the front, getting our bit of history from the tour guide. Me being me, I've got my EMF out. I'm seeing orange and red lights. The EMF's going off its head. I've got the app going, and hang on. The app's going off its head. Now, there was a lot happening I wasn't expecting, but did you put the pictures in the thing so we can show them or not?
Of the words?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so when we got there, the guy was going through her thing. Now, the first thing that come up was take. So then I've asked her, take who, take what? And then very quickly after, the bars have gone, and I've got master come up. And I've asked master who, master room, master person, and then it's come up with moaning. And it's like, okay, this is starting to come together and give me a bit of a weird feeling. Tour guides started walking on to the next section. Of course, I've had to follow. So they've all crossed the road. One of the other ladies in the tour stopped with me, has come up telling me to stop moving. So I've just stopped at this intersection. I've told this other lady, she's run across the road, and she's told them that I've been told to stop. So the tour guide turned around and said to her, it's okay, he's got long legs, he'll catch up. So I've stopped moving, and I've asked her why. Why does she want me to stop? And then it's come up unclear. And unclear, what do you mean by unclear? And then it was near you. And it's like, who's near me? What's near me? And then I've crossed over the street. And as I've crossed over the street, it's come up, blood here, sister. And I've asked the tour guide, and the tour guide didn't really know too much about it. And then it was malevolent. I don't know why that come up. And then it was tough, trace, and then she told me to go. And by then, we were already starting to make our way into the next part of the tour.
Also, the room in the Windsor Hotel that she used to actually own. So she owned the room, and the story was that she used to frequently bring men back there. So now they say that you see her ghost. Like, we felt something outside of there, but you can actually rent her room out for the night.
Yeah, the Melba suite, they call it.
Yes, they call it the Melba suite. But what it was is you do see, they say that you see her walking up and down the corridors. She's been known to be standing over the bed when you are sleeping. And apparently you can hear lovely sounds in the bedroom at nighttime as well from Melba.
So that'll be the moaning, I'm assuming.
So this one's just another picture of Melbourne, because after that we just went down into Chinatown and went around a circle to cleanse everyone before we left.
So she told us the story of Chinatown. Back in the day where we were standing was all the opium dens. And as you can imagine, a lot of roughhousing people and stuff, and Chinese are into circles and cleansing. So in the middle of Chinatown, if you looked up, there was a big circle that we were standing under. If you weren't standing under, she recommended to stand under it because it will actually help cleanse any spirits that have attached to you along the tour as part of the Chinese mythology.
So, yeah, and there was that man that told everyone he'd made it rich in the gold fields.
Oh, yeah, and it caused all the people to come over in the gold rush. That was actually funny because word got out that some guy made it rich in Australia, Victoria, and people were actually selling all their worldly possessions and taking the long trip to come over here to strike it rich, thinking that it was in the city, but it was actually out at Ballarat, which is hours away from the city. So they either got stranded in Victoria in the city and decided to make a go of it. Some people even decided they were going to try and walk to get their gold.
But yeah, so that was about all of it.
The only other thing was the gentleman's club, but there was nothing there either.
I couldn't get photos. These were the ones that came out white. Yeah, it was a walking tour. So it went for about an hour and a half, this one. And it was just walking around, but it was all in probably about 5 blocks of each other. So it was a beautiful night. It was a nice out. Because, as you know, Spirit Time has been sick. So it was really good to get out and do some of what we do. But there are some more that this group does. There's like another 5 tours. So we do want to do them. But what we're going to do is I'm going to put it on my community page because Spirit Time doesn't have his 500 subscribers. But I do. So I'm going to... What we're going to do is we're going to have a questionnaire and we're going to put all the different, like 3 different tours on there. And what we want to do is have people come and pick which one they would like us to do. And we're going to go around and do them all and try and bring more footage back. Hopefully next time my phone doesn't mess up. And we want to try and share some of Melbourne's history and the paranormal that's around Melbourne at the moment.
Yeah, so those pictures, that was weird because on our train ride, because we don't really drive around Melbourne because there's a lot of traffic, and especially driving into the city, it's absolutely bedlam. And we're only like 20 minutes from the city, so we just went in by train. So on the train ride home, Ozzy was showing me the pictures she'd taken and going through them all, but it wasn't until, next morning, wasn't it? Yeah, next morning, she's going to start setting this up, and half the pictures we had either turned blurry or turned into a complete white square, completely vanished. So we do know that the spirits like to play with equipment, so that could be possibly why. Now, if you're at home and you don't have access to any of this equipment, there is easy ways to see if you have spirits in your house. All it requires is you could use a baking dish, put some sand in the baking dish or some fine dirt, just drop some marbles. Don't move them, just drop them in a spot and just leave it overnight because they do like to play games, so they will actually move them. So when you wake up the next morning and go back a couple hours later, you might find the marbles have been moved. That's just one cheap, easy way to see if you've actually got spirits in your house without having to go out and pay for EMFs and spirit boxes and everything else that comes along with looking for ghosts.
I'm just trying to see if there's any questions. If you've got any questions, if you have asked, sorry, just put it in again. I am just looking through to see if I can see any for you.
I tried to keep up with the chat.
Was it a walking tour? Yes.
Do you guys do own tours? No, not at the moment. I would like to down the track, but I'll have to learn some more and get some more equipment. There's a lot more to be done. I did mention in the chat earlier that Ozzy did find a course we can do, which will help us learn the better equipment, how to communicate with the spirits more, and how to help move the spirits on, which should be really interesting to do.
But a lot of our training has come. We have spent... So Beechworth Asylum was like our backyard. We have done a live on that one, and it will explain a bit more about where we came from into the paranormal. But we had a really good friend named Craig Powell, and he was part of
Team
Whisper. So he was the only paranormal person in Australia ever sanctuated to... He basically, the government paid him to go over to Cockatoo Island, what's in Sydney, and he had to go over and debunk if there was any spirits there. When he got over there, he done a paranormal study for a bit over 2 years, and not only could he not debunk it, but he ended up coming out with footage of what he thought was a spirit. People did come over from America and they tried to debunk him. They tried to prove that he had made the picture up, but it didn't work. And yeah, there's actually a documentary about it. But he did come down to Beechworth and taught me and Matthew quite a lot. We've been there, like, I've lost track, probably 10, 12 times with him and done major paranormal tours. And yeah, now we're actually going into studying to learn to help move them over and help them a bit more. We can't hear you. Spirit Times just walked out and is talking to you outside. Well, we can't hear him. You've also left the stream. There.
No, I didn't.
Okay, now you're back.
Yeah, no, we didn't run it, William. We were just on the tour.
Brian, we have done spirit boxes, but just this one wasn't something that we could do. It Matthew, like Spirit Time did try and turn it on a couple of times, but because it was a walking tour and we had a lady talking to us, she just kept giving us really dirty looks every time we turned it on. And we weren't in a space long enough.
No, so
that's the problem
with the walking tours, because you're only in a location long enough to get a little bit of history of the area before they've got to move you on again to get to the next spot. Now, Beechworth is completely different. Beechworth is an actual asylum, so you get quite a lot of time to spend in one location where you can run your spirit boxes and stuff. I do highly recommend that if you are into old history and things like that, look up Beechworth. You'll also find that Ned Kelly, the famous Australian bushranger, was also out that way, so you can learn some of that stuff while you're out there. But in the asylum, there's 10,000 people actually buried in the cemetery. So that's why they get so much activity out at the asylum and why it's so much fun there.
Probably in about another 2 weeks. Oh, yeah, probably another 2 weeks. Hopefully, as long as Spirit Time's up to it, because we've got to go slow with him because he's been so sick at the moment. But as I said, I am going to put it up on my community post, and we're going to put about 3 up. And hopefully everyone, I'm hoping you all sub to me as well, so you can get over there and put in your vote. And this time next week, we'll draw it and see where we're going to go. And whoever's got the most votes, that's where we'll go and what we'll do and bring it to you. Like another thing too, what we love about paranormal is we love history. And that's a big thing for us as well, is not only are we learning all the paranormal and getting to experience that, but we also learn a lot of history along the way. And it doesn't matter where you go or what investigation, you're always looking at the history of where you are. And that's another part that we love about it.
Now, we're hoping to meet Emu and Van over in Cockatoo Island and freak the hell out of them, which would be really good because you can actually go there and stay on the island. Now, Cockatoo Island used to be an old naval base, so there is a lot of activity on there too. So fingers crossed we can get there and hopefully.
And that weekend we will actually be doing quite a few lives.
Yeah. Lives, pictures, there'll be a lot.
So the channel's only starting, but hopefully we'll get Spirit Time up there and get him more subs, and you can come along for the ride.
And put up with my shenanigans.
Okay, I just want to thank everybody for coming and joining us tonight.
Cheers for stopping by, everyone. I'm still kind of getting used to this whole rigmarole of YouTube. I'm sure as I do, or as more comes along and more happens, we put more up, I'll get better at it, and I'll try and watch the comments a little bit more. But thank you all for popping in, saying hello, getting to meet, and enjoying what we had to share.
Thank you, everybody.
Much love, Jenna. Thanks, everyone.